The church smelled of beeswax and pine, but the candles were burning too fast. You stood at the altar in the only dress you'd ever owned that wasn't meant for work, lace at the collar, sleeves too tight at the elbows. Your hands trembled, not from nerves, but from heat. There were too many eyes and not enough air. The preacher shifted, cleared his throat, and your groom, Benjamin Lawton, was nowhere to be seen. Someone whispered behind the last pew. Someone else coughed. A child began to cry. You stared at the door like it might open any moment, but it didn't. The wind outside changed. The bell tower creaked, and the room went still in the way only betrayal can silence a place. He had ridden away, not to war, not to illness, just away. Took his saddlebag and the money your father loaned him and left your name at the altar like a question. The preacher finally said, "You may sit, child," but you didn't. You turned, walked down the aisle with your chin high and your chest burning like a brand. You didn't wait for someone to stop you. No one did. Outside, the wind tugged at your veil. You pulled it off, tore it, let it fall into the dirt as you passed the whitewashed fence and the hitching post where his horse had stood just an hour ago. The sun was too bright, your skin felt too tight, and the dress itched in places it shouldn't. At the edge of the churchyard, beneath the cottonwood tree, stood a woman in black. Not a mourner, not a gossip, a widow by the look of her. Gray braid, hands folded, shawl heavy over one shoulder. She didn't smile, but she stepped forward, held out that shawl, and said, quiet as thread, "You don't need to wear the shame too." You stared at her, then at the townsfolk who still lingered like smoke behind you. Then you took the shawl, wrapped it over the lace, and kept walking. No one followed, but the widow did. 5 paces behind, not too near, not too far, until the church was gone, until the town gave way to wind again, until the only name that mattered was the one you hadn't spoken since you were a child. The shawl smelled like cedar, the road ahead smelled like rain, and you didn't look back, not once. If stories like this help you breathe easier, you know where to find more. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let the story come to you. She never asked your name, didn't need to. You'd already given it up somewhere between the altar and the road out of town. The widow walked behind you, boots crunching dry grass, 1 step slower than yours, enough to let you lead, but close enough you could feel her stillness like a shadow that chose to stay. You crossed a fence line, kept walking. She didn't speak, didn't point to where you were going. Only when your feet began to drag, when the lace clung to your knees from dust and sweat, did she gesture toward a bend in the trail. "There's water ahead," she said. A shallow stream coiled through a gap in the trees, glassy and brown. You knelt and drank with both hands, like a child, then cupped water to your neck. The shawl soaked through. You didn't care. Behind you, the widow crouched and pulled a worn tin flask from her bag. She sipped, then wiped the rim and passed it to you. You didn't ask what was inside. You drank. It was warm, sharp, burned on the way down. You coughed once. She didn't flinch, just said, "Takes the edge off." Later, when the trail climbed again and your boots gave up their soles, she offered you her arm. You took it. Not as a surrender, just as a pause. By dusk, her cabin appeared like a secret the trees were ashamed to keep. 1 room, stone hearth, smoke rising from the chimney in a thin, unbothered line. No flowers, no welcome mat, only a single pair of muddy shoes outside the door. Yours, she explained. Once you sat by the fire and saw them dry against the wall. From before. A different time. A different girl. She poured tea. No sugar. No milk. Just bitter and hot and honest. You sipped. She sat. And in the stillness, something fragile passed between you. Not a story. Not yet. But a recognition. She finally said, "They always run when the lace costs more than the vow." You didn't answer, just stared at the fire. She added, "You can stay. No rent, no talk." Then she pointed to the mantel. A single iron key lay there, wrapped in a bit of velvet. Up to you. You slept on the floor that night, not because she offered it, because you chose it. You needed something cold beneath your bones to believe the fire was real and still. You dreamed of bells that never rang and a name you hadn't said in weeks, rising in smoke, asking if you were done being silent. Mornings came quiet here, no rooster, no hymn, just wind brushing the shutters and the faint rattle of her kettle on the iron stove. You wake to the smell of boiled oats and salt pork, nothing sweet, nothing soft. Survival food. The widow doesn't greet you. She just slides a bowl across the table and nods. You're expected to eat, so you do. She doesn't ask questions, not about the dress still drying near the hearth, not about the bruises near your ribs, not about why you flinch at shadows, even in daylight. She sees, but says nothing. By midday she takes you outside, hands you a hat and a hoe. No words, just motion. She shows you the garden, choked, uneven, bruised by wind. It's barely holding on like you. You work beside her, silent, digging rows that won't yield much. She doesn't correct your posture, doesn't tell you how to do it right. She lets you learn through ache. Later, when your palms blister and your breath burns, she says softly, "You're not made of lace." You freeze. She doesn't explain, doesn't need to. That evening, the door creaks open on its own from the breeze. You expect her to shut it, but she doesn't. You realize she doesn't have curtains anywhere. No fabric between her and the world. You glance at her, cautious. She just says, "If a man wants to find me, he already knows where I am." Then she adds, "And if he doesn't, let the wind show him." That night, as firelight softens the corners of the cabin, she brings down a box from the shelf, doesn't open it, just sets it between you, a wooden box lacquered dark. You know better than to ask. Instead she waits, then says, "I had a daughter once." The silence that follows is brittle. She doesn't continue, and you don't press. You both sit with ghosts, different ones, but still kin. Later, you take your tea to the porch, bare feet, cold steps. You look out across the prairie, and for the first time in weeks, the quiet doesn't feel like judgment. It feels like permission. Inside, the box remains unopened, but its presence tells you something. This woman has burned things before, and buried others, but not this, not yet. And that means some truths still wait to be named, maybe even yours. The next morning, she lets you sleep in, not because she's soft, but because she knows what's coming. When you finally rise, the house is empty. The fire's dead. The air cold. A note on the table reads, "Feed the hens. Water the stove. Face something." No signature, no instructions beyond that. You open the door to silence. Not the gentle kind, the kind that makes your skin feel too thin. You find the hens. Pecking around, waiting. You scatter feed with stiff hands, still sore from the hoe. One clucks with a limp. The others bully her. You scatter extra feed her way. It's the first decision you've made here, and it feels real. Inside, the fire needs rebuilding. You've never built one from scratch, always watched others. Let someone else strike the match. You gather kindling, lay it wrong, try again, it sputters, dies, try again. Hands blacken, knuckles scrape, but it finally catches. You stare too long at the flame, as if it might burn away the memory of that church door slamming shut, and the man who never looked back. By the time the widow returns, your eyes sting from smoke, but the room is warm. She doesn't praise you, just steps inside, nods once, and begins chopping carrots. The silence between you no longer feels like a wall. It feels like a quilt, heavy, warm, stitched with shared effort. That night she pulls a book from the shelf. It's not a Bible. It's a ledger, old worn, ink faded. She doesn't explain. You scan the names. They aren't hers. Not yours, not his. They're women's names. Dozens. First names only. Beside each, a mark, some stars, some crosses, some burned through. You don't ask what it means, you know. At the bottom of the last page, space remains. Empty lines, no ink, not yet. After supper, she tells you about the fire that took her barn, took her child, took her old name. She never says the child's name. She never says her husband's. But she does say this: justice doesn't ride in on a white horse. Sometimes she's barefoot and angry. She looks at you then, real hard, like she sees what you're hiding, like she knows how your voice cracked when you tried to lie the first day, and she lets it go, just for now. Later, as you lie under one of her thick, scratchy quilts, you whisper aloud, "My name is still mine." It feels like claiming something, even if no one else hears it. You wake to the sound of rain on the roof, soft as breath. The kind of rain that hides footsteps, swallows words, rewrites the dirt. You lie still, eyes open, watching the beams above you darken. The air smells of wet wool and old smoke, and something else, ash. Downstairs, the fire has died. The widow is gone again, but the ledger sits where she left it, open this time, the page turned, and there, on the fresh page, you see a name, yours, not the name your mother gave you, not the one whispered behind your back in town, the one you told the widow in a trembling voice 2 nights ago. It's there in ink, as if it's always been there. Beside it, a star, simple, steady, you don't cry. But something warm moves behind your ribs. Outside, the rain softened the ground. The widow's in the garden, sleeves rolled high, digging. She doesn't look up when you join her, doesn't speak when you take the second shovel, but you dig, side by side, and after a long while she says, "Names don't save us." You pause. She continues, "But they can remind us what we survived." The plot isn't for vegetables. It's for something she won't say yet. You suspect it's for someone she once loved, or someone she buried, or some version of herself she never got to grieve. Later, you sit by the stove, flipping through the ledger while she sharpens knives. There are smudges beside some names. Others are crossed out. You ask, finally, why the stars? Why the crosses? She glances at you just once. Stars mean they stayed. Crosses? She stops sharpening. Crosses mean they left something burning behind. That night she tells you the story of a girl who once hid in her barn, running from a sheriff, pregnant, wounded, refused to name the man who did it. "She didn't stay long," the widow says, voice flat, "but she left me her wedding band." She holds it up, worn smooth, dull gold. You recognize the pattern. It matches the one you still keep hidden in your pocket, not yours, his. You reach into your pocket, place the ring on the table between you. She doesn't flinch, just adds another log to the fire, then says, "Some men give rings to claim, some women give them back to survive." You sleep better that night, knowing the ledger isn't a list of sins. It's a map of women who chose something: to stay, to leave, to burn, to rise. And now, your name is part of it. The next morning, the wind shifts, bringing with it the sound of hooves. You don't need to look to know it's not a rider from town. They'd come loud, proud, unafraid. This one's careful, pauses near the fence, lingers where the widow buried her iron stakes in salt. You rise from your stool, finger brushing the ledger spine. She notices. "You feel it too," she says. You nod. The widow doesn't rush. She takes a kettle off the stove, brushes soot from her apron, then says, like it's nothing, "Go down to the root cellar. Don't come up till I knock twice." You hesitate. Is it him? I don't know, but if it's not, worse. You descend the creaking ladder. The dark wraps around you like a wool blanket. Dust settles in your throat. You count the seconds. Above, the door opens. Voices, not hers, not his. Lower, male, plural. You catch fragments. Claimed she was dead. Tuh. No one buries their own name like that. Ledger's worth more than the whole ranch. Something breaks. A chair, a glass, then nothing. Then her voice, calm, measured. "Leave now or be written down in ways your sons won't forgive." One of them laughs, another curses. A thud, a scrape of boot against wood, and then a knock, twice. You emerge slowly. The smell hits you first, burnt hair, blood, and powder. The men are gone. One left behind a hat, another, a trail of red-booted prints across the porch. The widow's at the stove, sleeves rolled. "You still have a choice," she says. "I didn't kill them." You sit. "But you could have." She nods. Later, you help her scrub the porch. The blood clings to the grain like rust. She teaches you to salt it. Then she says, "When they come again, you'll light the fire." You think she means the stove, but she hands you a flint, not for heat, for signal. That night, you ask her why she didn't run when they came. She blows out the lantern, says softly, "Because no one lights a fire like me," and leaves it unfinished. And in the dark, you understand. This house isn't just a refuge. It's a line in the dust, a promise to every woman whose name was erased. You fall asleep with the flint under your pillow, not afraid, ready. The next morning, the widow hands you the shovel. She doesn't say what for. You follow her past the barn into the cottonwood grove that flanks the property's western edge. Here the ground softens. The air carries the hush of something long buried. "I used to come here to read names," she says. "Now I come to bury them." She kneels and draws a line in the dirt. You start to dig. The box you hit is metal, old, and fire-singed. She opens it like it's a grave. Inside, wrapped in linen and soot, is another ledger. Older. This one bears no name on the cover, just a single pressed flower, flattened so long ago it looks etched in ink. She lifts it out like it weighs 100 secrets. Most names written here were never meant to be read. You reach for it. She pulls it back. Only after. After what? She looks at the sky. After the truth burns. Back at the house, she builds the fire higher than usual. You watch her pull the first ledger, the one that bore your false name, the one that got you branded a thief, a liar, a bride for trade. She doesn't hesitate. She casts it into the flame. It curls, blackens, cracks. You think it will feel like relief, but it feels like a scream, yours. Every lie leaves a scar, she says. Burning it doesn't erase it. You sit in silence. Then you say, I don't want to be a name someone bought. She nods. Then choose your own, and write it where it can't be sold. You stare at the fire. Where's that? She taps your chest. That night, the wind howls like it's peeling the sky. You lie awake, fingers curled around the spine of the second ledger. You haven't opened it, but you feel it breathing, like it knows your real name before you do. Just before dawn, you rise, light the lamp, and open the cover. The first page is blank, save for a sentence in the widow's hand. What you survive becomes your ink. You don't sleep again. Instead, you sit at the little table near the window, watching the fire in the stove flicker and fade, watching the sky lighten behind a drift of snow. The ledger sits open before you, waiting. The pen trembles between your fingers. Your hand hovers over the page like it's scared to land, because names carry weight. Names once given get stolen, rewritten, weaponized. You write anyway. A name you were called once before it all. A name only your mother whispered into your braid. Then another name, one you invented when crossing into Dodge. You pause. Then write one more, just a word, not a name. Free. The wind moans through the chinks in the wall. The widow is still asleep, her breath audible through the cracked door. It sounds steady, safe. You flip the page, write the year, then the place. Just outside Dodge City, where names burned and stayed burned. You add a sentence. I wasn't the first to be sold. After breakfast, you carry the ledger to the barn. The scout is there, mending tack. His coat's missing a button, and his braid is damp from snowmelt. He doesn't look up. You offer him the book. I wrote it down, you say. Still, no glance. Then he says, good. You linger, then ask, what would you write? He shrugs. My name's not paper-bound. You nod slowly. Mine was. And he finally looks at you, quiet but not cold. He says, then let the fire hold it now, and let your mouth speak only what you own. You walk the ledger back to the house, but you don't shelve it. You wrap it in oilcloth, tuck it under the floorboards. You don't need to carry it because it's already inside you. That afternoon, the widow brings you cloth. It's not a dress, she says, laughing at your expression. It's a coat. Why? You'll need it, she says. You're going to court. Your stomach drops. What? You said you'd testify. You hadn't, but somehow you had. Will they believe me? You ask. They'll believe the fire, she replies, or they'll believe nothing, and even then you'll know. You exhale like something inside you finally let go. You nod. I'll go. That night she sharpens a pencil, hands it to you. One more page, she says, before you go. You write the date, then she lit the fire. But I kept it burning. The courthouse smells of old wood and bitter tobacco. You grip the railing, knuckles white, and breathe in the hush. It's not packed, just enough faces to feel like too many. Men in dusty coats, women with tight mouths, one reporter, two lawmen, and Judge Mather, whose mustache twitches every time someone says, the widow. She sits behind you, still, like a monument to women who refuse to bend. You're not sure how your legs carried you to the stand, but now you're here, and your voice has to follow. State your name. You hesitate. Then speak it slowly, the name from your mother, the name from ash, not the one in the burned ledger. The judge blinks. The clerk writes. And just like that, it's real. You tell them about the wedding, the groom's smirk, the crowd's silence, the way no one stopped him. Or you. You tell them about the widow, about the ledger, about the man who held the match but not the truth. The courtroom holds its breath. You feel each heartbeat in your throat. A lawyer asks, "Why didn't you report this earlier?" You pause, then say, "Because when you burn a name, it's not just ink. It's voice, it's blood, it's belief. And I had none left to bring." There's silence. Even the gavel doesn't follow. The scout enters late, stands near the back wall. He doesn't sit, doesn't blink, just watches. And somehow, that's enough. The judge leans forward, reads something off a note, something about property, consent, and justice as defined in 1871. Then he clears his throat and says, "This court finds." You close your eyes, but the words come anyway, not perfect words, but something like beginning. Outside, the sun's too bright. You squint against it like it might undo you, but the widow offers you her arm. "You did it," she whispers. "Noah," you say. "I remembered it," out loud. She smiles. That's braver. A boy runs past, drops a scrap of paper. It skitters in the wind. You catch it before it flies away. One word, branded, crossed out in black ink. Under it someone scribbled, "Burned, but not broken." You don't know who wrote it, but it fits in your pocket just fine. The widow doesn't ask if you want to go back. She simply starts walking, east of town, away from the courthouse, toward the ridge. You follow, boots kicking up dust. The boy trails behind, arms wrapped tight around a bundle wrapped in cloth. The cloth that once swaddled your ledger. Now it wraps the new ledger you'll write. But not today. You reach a bend in the hill where the earth changes color. The scent of something green lingers. And there it is, your cabin, or what's left of it. Blackened bones of a roof, charred stones, a few iron nails curled like dried worms. The baby cradle is gone, so is the window. But somehow the floor remembers you. You step inside. The wind doesn't follow. The widow places a hammer in your hand, old oak, worn smooth. "I saved it," she says. You don't ask why. You know, because what a man builds to erase a name, a woman can rebuild to give one. You start with the corners, you always do. She teaches you how to mix mud with crushed shells. The Comanche taught her that. "The lime keeps out rot," she explains. You nod, but you already knew. The scout once whispered the same. As you dig the post holes, you unearth something metal, a badge, sheriff's star, rusted and twisted. You laugh. "Even the law buries itself here," she shrugs. "Then we dig deeper, and you do. Together." The boy draws in the dirt while you work. Circles, animals, a house with smoke curling from the roof. He draws a figure in a red shawl. You pause, and he smiles. "That's you," he says, "when you're finished." By sundown, 2 walls stand. No roof yet, but there's shelter. The widow pours beans into a tin pot. The boy hums. You lay on the dirt floor and let your lungs stretch. That night, around the fire, you ask, "What happens now?" She pokes at the embers, says nothing. Then, "You keep building, even if they come back?" "Especially if they do." You find the scout's footprint the next morning, near the trail. Not too close, but fresh. He doesn't stay. Just make sure you're not alone. Later, the boy places a folded note on your lap, a name written in careful script, your name. The one the judge heard, the one that didn't burn. You hold it to your chest, let it soften your breath, then whisper it aloud, not for anyone else, just for the walls and the wind, and maybe, just maybe, for the man who never stopped walking. It begins with the return of a rumor. At first, it's a whisper passed between fence posts. A merchant's clerk mentions your name, the one written clean and inked, not the one that burned. Then a rider comes from Dodge, not a lawman, worse. A lawyer, hat too stiff, boots too polished. He carries a writ sealed in red. The widow doesn't flinch when he arrives. You do. He speaks soft, like someone used to folding truth into smaller pieces. There's a claim on your land, he says. You blink. Your land? The dirt you dug by hand? The cabin raised again with blood and shell mortar? The ash where your name was buried? He continues. Signed by a Mr. Baines. That name sticks like dry bread. The boy hears and runs. He finds the ledger, the new one. The one wrapped in shawl and soil and silence. You hand it to the man. He flips through pages filled with careful marks. Timber bought, nails bartered, witnesses' names, drawings by the boy. This ledger proves nothing, he mutters. But you don't answer. You just stand taller. He folds the paper, tucks it into his coat, says he'll return. That night the wind tastes colder, the fire feels smaller, but the widow grins. We'll write another ledger, she says. And you do. You begin keeping track of everything, how many bricks you lay, how much flour the widow gives. Every hour the boy spends drawing light in corners. Then one morning, hoofbeats come again, but not the lawyer. This time it's Baines himself. His eyes carry the smirk of someone who's never bled from a splinter. He points at your door with a cane tipped in ivory. You can't keep this, he says, not after what you did. Your knuckles whiten, but you say nothing. The widow steps between you. Leave, Baines laughs. He holds up a burnt scrap, ledger paper half blackened, with a name still legible. Yours. The court has this, he says. It says you owe me. The boy walks forward. In his hand is the new ledger. He opens to the last page. There, in a child's crooked letters, she owes no man. She belongs to herself. Something flickers in Baines's eyes, just for a moment. Then he turns and leaves. Not a word more, not a glance back. Later, you find a rock at your door, underneath a single black feather. The scout's way of saying, I saw. You are still seen. That night, you burn the old scrap of ledger, not in anger, not in shame, but like burying the last bone of a name that never fit. As the smoke rises, the widow whispers, now it's yours. And in the orange glow, you believe her. You never meant to become something other women whispered about, yet now folks leave folded cloth at your porch, a strip of fabric, a stitched name, a feather tucked like punctuation. The widow tells you they're gifts, but you know, they're stories. Stories of women who couldn't speak aloud, so they send signs instead. One dusk, the boy brings you a letter, no postage, just twine and pressed lavender. You unfold it. The handwriting is delicate. I saw the smoke that night. I knew it was you. We're still watching. You are not alone. There is no signature, but you recognize the curve of the vowels. It's the teacher from 3 towns east, the one whose husband vanished into drink. She'd once said, some fires burn quiet, but they never go out. That night the widow brings out her old sewing kit. "We stitch back what's been torn," she says. And you begin mending, not just fabric, walls, windows, silences. Then comes the writer with news, a federal clerk. You expect more trouble, but he's different, soft-spoken, jacket too big. He unrolls a document. Territory now recognizes independent homesteaders. Women can sign, widows, brides, even those with branded pasts. You laugh, a sound you didn't know still lived in you. Then you sign your name, your real name. The boy claps, the widow hums, and somewhere far off, a scout watches from shadow, unseen but near. You plant a tree the next morning. The ledger is buried beneath it, not as proof, not as defense, as seed. Soon, other women arrive. Some stay, some only sleep a night and leave before dawn. Each leaves something behind, a button, a ribbon, a story. One asks if she may name the place. You nod. She thinks for a long time, then says, "Kindling House," because this is where the fires are kept alive. And never again forgotten. Later, the boy draws the name in block letters, paints it on a scrap of wagon board, nails it above the door. It creaks in the wind, but holds, like you. The first true storm comes in spring, the kind that doesn't just rattle windows, it tests your spine. Rain slams the rooftop, the creek swells, lightning opens the sky like a wound. Inside the cabin, you grip the ledger, the one you signed. Your name, now legal, still strange, still new. The widow fastens shutters, calm as ever. The boy watches you, eyes wide, not with fear, but expectation, as if he knows you've walked through worse. Water creeps beneath the door. You stuff rags, lift the cradle, hold the baby tight. She doesn't cry. She senses something in you, a steadiness no paper could grant. A flash, then thunder. Too close. The tree out back takes the hit, splits down the middle. The widow winces, not for the tree, but for what you'll lose. It's the one that shaded your mother's cradle. You had carved initials there, yours, your daughter's, the stranger's who never returned. But then something unexpected. The boy runs into the rain. You shout, once, then again. But he's gone. Moments later, he returns, sopping, shivering, clutching something wrapped in oilcloth. It's your old shawl, the one you thought was taken long ago, the one wrapped around you the day your child was born. He had hidden it, kept it safe. For the right moment, he says, teeth chattering, you kneel, wrap it around him, then around the cradle. It smells like ash and lavender, but it feels like home. Later that night, the storm passes. The tree still stands, half of it. You touch its trunk. The initials are gone, but the groove remains. Proof enough. You sleep beside the hearth, cradle beside you, shawl wrapped like a vow. Outside the wind fades. Inside the fire whispers. This isn't survival anymore. It's beginning. You wake before the sun. The air still carries smoke from the night before. Ash lingers on the floorboards, light as regret. But your name feels heavier, more real. The widow offers you tea, not out of pity, out of habit. The kind of habit that makes you family. She doesn't speak at first, just watches you hold the cradle, the shawl still wrapped around your child like a second skin. Then she slides a piece of paper toward you, burnt at the edges, but still legible. A notice. The man who left you at the altar has returned. He's filed to reclaim property, land, and you. He claims the marriage was valid, that the child is his, that you ran. You fold the paper without reading the rest. There's nothing he could write you haven't already survived. The widow lights the stove with a spark of calm fury. I've seen too many men try to buy back what they threw away. You nod but say nothing. Not yet. Because there's one place you must go first. You carry the cradle to town, through mud and whispers. The boy walks beside you, not for protection, for witness. People stare. The sheriff glances from his office. The postman steps aside. You stop outside the courthouse. Not to file, but to burn. You tear the notice in half. Then again, then light it with the match the widow gave you. It flares bright, brief, then gone. Smoke curls toward the sky. The child doesn't flinch. You sure? The boy asks. You nod. I'm not hers because she bore me, you whisper. I'm hers because she stayed. Later that night, the widow sets another chair by the fire. Not for guests, not for charity, for you. And beside you, the cradle, and within it, a name no one can take. The fire's almost out. Only the soft pop of ember against ember remains. Outside, wind moves through bare trees like a whisper asking to stay. Inside, you hold your child close, listening to the rhythm of two hearts, yours and hers. The widow breathes slowly in the rocker, her eyes half closed but watching, not guarding, not weighing, just remembering. You speak in near silence. She said I was trouble, said I'd shame her house if I stayed. You pause. I did. A smile touches your lips, the first tonight. But not hers. The widow lifts the shawl from the cradle. It's fraying now, stained with storm water, baked with milk, lined with the salt of fear and effort, yet still it holds. The child stirs, not fussing, just making sure you're near. You touch at her cheek with your pinky. She sighs. You know, the widow says softly, in some tribes they name the child not for birth, but for survival. You look up. Her eyes don't waver. They wait, see what almost kills them, and then name them for what they outlive. You nod, not because you understand everything, but because you trust her enough to keep listening. Down the hall, the clock ticks once. The wind shifts again, this time bringing quiet. You speak once more, not to the widow, but to the dark. If she asks someday who I was, you touch your chest. Tell her I was the one who burned the paper. The widow stands, wraps the cradle again and hums. No lullaby, no hymn, just the sound of a woman who stayed and made space for one more. You don't say goodnight. You don't need to, because the fire may die, but the warmth lingers in shawl, in skin, in name.